Welcome to Home Brew by J.W. Martin Real Estate, where we uncover the true stories of what's brewing in South Carolina's local business scene. I'm Joey Martin, and each week we sit down with the ones who are pushing through the grind. Business owners, creators, and community leaders who have fought through the tough times and come out stronger. No fluff, just real stories, smart insights, and a whole lot of lessons learned the hard way. Let's dive in. Today's guest is a close personal friend of mine. We've done tons of business together and just an all-around great guy. He's a father, a man of faith, husband. He's won numerous awards in his industry, including he was featured in the Rising Stars Awards from Housing Wire, which is the top 80 people in the entire country in the financial services industry. He was one of the top 40 under 40 here locally in Oconee County, and just a all-around great human being, in my opinion. Welcome to the show, Shane Miller.
Thank you, Joey. Appreciate you, my friend. I was telling you earlier on that my eyes were a little watery this morning. So, I'm glad I have a good excuse for that introduction now, man. That was you almost brought tears to my eyes.
Oh, Lord, have mercy.
All jokes, my friend. Thank you for the kind introduction. It's nice being here with you.
Oh, man, I'm glad you finally are able to come on the show and just welcome, man. And because what Homebrew is all about is about local entrepreneurs and beyond, but just talking about the good times, the bad times, some of the struggles, the heartaches, and then it's finally, you may come out on top in the end. And you're definitely...
That's right. We want to anyway.
Absolutely. And you're kind of like myself. I've got my hands on a lot of different things, but you've achieved so much at a young age. But let's go back to the beginning when you first started, before all the success and before the variety of business entities that you're involved in. Let's go back to the beginning and kind of talk about your entrepreneurial journey when it all started. Tell us a little bit about your background, Shane, if you will.
Oh my goodness, man. I've always had what you would call an entrepreneurial spirit. If you really go back to the very beginning, my goodness, probably when I was a kid, 7, 8, 9 years old. So my first journey, I guess, with entrepreneurship was when I was a kid in church, and it wasn't a business, obviously. We had a leadership council there at church that I was a part of, and that taught me a lot. Managed from, I guess, a much smaller scale. Obviously, we answered to the real leaders in the church, but that taught me a lot because I was the president of the council, and we had to oversee budget and the finance, and we had to really, for all intents and purposes, lead from a youth perspective. So that really, I gained a lot of knowledge doing that. As I grew within my entrepreneurial journey, I'll tell you, I didn't always know that this is where I would be necessarily, but God always has a plan. And when I was younger, especially coming through middle school and high school, I really thought that I would either something in the legal studies field or public policy, because my undergraduate degree was in political science. I always thought that I wanted to do something in public policy or politics, and then transcend a little farther into my journey. And I thought maybe something in medicine. When I was 20 years old, however, I was introduced to the financial services and the banking industry. And I guess that's what really launched in a real meaningful way. I dabbled in some things prior to that, but as most teenagers do, wanting to become a business owner. But I would say when I got into banking, that's what really, between banking, construction, and a lot of other cluster of businesses in the housing economy, that's when I really decided, hey, business, entrepreneurship, leadership, that's my passion. That's what I want to do. And wrapping it up in a nutshell, if you will, that's where we are today.
Yeah. Okay. As going back, you said 7 or 8 years old when you were a child. I also, when I was very young, jokingly shared this before, that I would go cut grass and things like that in order to get a latest cassette tape, and then I'd dub it, and then I'd go sell the dub tapes to the other kids at school for $1. And so I could go get myself the next latest cassette tape. But little did I know I was bootlegging music when I was in 3rd grade. But but I could certainly relate to that entrepreneurial bug at a very young age. So that's neat that we share that in common. But you have a military background as well, I believe. Isn't that correct?
I do, yeah. So an interesting story, Joey. So I was actually part of the Army, what they call the SMP program, the simultaneous membership program, where they allowed me to go to college while drilling with the Army. And
Okay.
I did that for a couple of 2 to 3 years on the enlisted side. And then I was sitting in my office in the bank one day, and this is when I was I was just about finished with my undergraduate degree. And I always knew that I wanted to go on into higher education. So I thought about two different paths with my master's. But I was sitting in my office one day, and an Army recruiter from Clemson shows up. And I attended Clemson for my undergraduate. He shows up, and essentially he said, "Look, we pay for you to come back to school and join ROTC and become an officer in the Army. Would you be interested in coming back if we put you on scholarship?" He was basically telling, "Look, we're going to pay for your master's, man, if you come back to school." So
Right.
I said, "Sign me up, coach, put me in."
Yeah,
So I
absolutely.
went back to Clemson at that time and worked on my master's, joined the ROTC program, got extremely involved with ROTC and the military side of the house at Clemson. Absolutely loved it. I worked on my master's for a couple of years, got my commission, went on and joined the infantry as an infantry officer in the Army.
Wow. Fantastic. And how beneficial was the structure that comes along with the military? How beneficial do you feel that's been in business?
Well, I'll tell you, man, there's one word that I use often, and that's resolve. That's resolute and discipline, and, which really cascades to discipline. And I use that word often because I don't think you can be a successful entrepreneur without having
Absolutely.
resolve, without having the grind to push farther when others may not want to go that far. So I will tell you that I think I've always been a disciplined individual, but the
Right.
structure, Joey, to your point, that comes with being in the military, that that is very, it becomes a job, becomes a source at that point. It's not just something that you inherently believe you have. You have to do it because that's the requirement. So when you
Right.
have to wake up at, my goodness, whatever you name the time in the morning, you have to wake up every morning and make your bed. When you have to eat at a certain time, when you have to physical train at a certain time, when you follow this itinerary that is extremely disciplined on a daily basis, it absolutely teaches you and requires you, frankly, to follow that path, I believe. And so from a entrepreneurial perspective, it's ingrained, it's a whole part of my life. And I'll tell you, it's helped me tremendously because I remain a very resolute person who wakes up every day and gets at it. And I think that's what you have to do to be successful.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I'll tell you, my in my personal journey with being an entrepreneur, I've struggled with discipline when I first got started, and I was just flying by the seat of my pants, and I was just so busy because I started a restaurant and the real estate brokerage in the same year, 2011. I was just flying by the seat of my pants, literally working 18, 20 hours a day. And it was crazy. And I don't know how I did it for quite some time. Did you ever have a period of chaos like that throughout your entrepreneurial journey, or have you been pretty consistently disciplined?
Oh my goodness, man. How much time do we have, Joey? No, of course, of course. And look, I think that most entrepreneurs, not all, but I think that most entrepreneurs will tell you that there have been moments of chaos and failure, honestly. But those are also the moments I think that teach us how to succeed in the future. Uh, what I'll say is I've always been disciplined in where I think I failed as a much younger entrepreneur that I've learned from. And it was a learning experience. I tried to be everything. I tried to get involved in everything. When I heard a fresh idea, I wanted to be involved. When I saw something that I thought was a good business idea, I wanted to be involved. And the reality is we're not great at everything. I think you have to find your niche. And I think that when you have businesses that really rely and supplement each other, that's when you're most successful. I'm not suggesting by any means that you can't be a home builder or a banker or a real estate broker. And, Joey, you have your hands in several different things as well. But to your point, I think you learn from that 2011 experience, just like I learned as a teenager, as I was quote unquote starting business. When my success came when I realized that in order for me to be most successful, I need to play in the same sandbox for the most part. So today, all of my businesses, with the exception of one or two, are in the housing economy. So they all support and supplement each other. And because of that, it allows me to manage it from a comprehensive level because it's all in the same space. Does that make sense? So
Oh,
yeah, my earlier failures were when I wanted to go. I too was in the restaurant industry for a while, and I dabbled in that for a couple of years, and I learned very quickly that it was not for me.
it's,
It's much
it's,
like you probably did. I actually remember going to your restaurant back in when
yeah,
you owned your restaurant. So you can relate to that. We do things as entrepreneurs. And I think as we do things, they're not necessarily failures. I don't always like using the word failure for learning experience. I like to think of it as education. You pay to
oh,
go to school, and I've paid to learn business.
absolutely.
In fact, for some of those
Oh
less
yeah.
successful businesses earlier on.
Yeah. I tell you, when I had both the restaurant and the real estate brokerage just getting started at the same time, I wound up just being mediocre at both. And because my passion was with real estate, and then the restaurant was a shiny object that looked like it might be. And how wrong was I? It looked like it might be easy money. It looked like it was going to be a fun way to make money. And good Lord, was I wrong on that one. The amount of time and effort, and energy that it became a vampire of just sucking me dry of energy. And so I became mediocre at both businesses. And so I realized that if I don't eliminate one of these, I'm going to end up shutting down two businesses instead of just one. Yeah.
Right.
And thankfully, after closing down the restaurant, making that decision, it the real estate sales increased 30% in a single year. So it it told me I'd made the right
Wow.
decision. Yeah. And so,
And you're still crushing it. Every time we talk, guys are increasing that business. So you definitely made the right decision.
yeah, well, I appreciate that. And it sounds like what kind of restaurant were you involved with way back when?
So what my first job ever, my first real job, Joey, was a dishwasher at 9
Mhm.
years old when
Okay.
working in my grandmother's restaurant. So my grandmother and my grandfather, little old Liberty, South Carolina, opened a little restaurant, meat and three, as we call them, and here
Okay.
in the South, a
That's
meat
right.
and three restaurant called Lou's Country Kitchen, because my grandmother's nickname was
Hmm.
Lulu. So they opened that restaurant. It was very successful, and they did really well for a period of time. The big AT&T plant was literally right behind it. The business
Uh,
was very strong, but then AT&T, their operation. So the business went down a bit. My grandmother decided to sell it for a couple of hands, and then I ultimately bought it later on. Of course, when I was old, I started in the business when I was 9. Then I've been working since I was 9 years old.
yeah.
So dishwasher, grill cook, server, cash register, all of those things in the restaurant business until ultimately one day, about 10, 11 years later, bought that same restaurant and ran and operated it myself for about a year. It only took about a year for me to realize this is not for me. I realized what I enjoyed about it. What I enjoyed about it was actually operating the business. I actually enjoyed the entrepreneurial part of the business as well as I do. When you're in the restaurant business, until it's well established and your margins are strong, you're going to be married to that business.
Absolutely.
I was there all the time. I'd go home, pull up in my driveway. Someone would call me and I'd have to turn right back. So I know you could relate to that having been in the business, but that's where it all
Oh,
started.
one thing that I learned from that restaurant venture was just, man, the importance of systems and processes that looking back, when I say flying by the seat of my pants, there was just, we lacked so many systems and processes in that business that it would have been difficult for it to succeed with such a lack of systems and processes. And thankfully, over the years, I've become somewhat obsessed with systems and processes, I guess you could say, and I guess SOPs and things like that. Now it's taken some time for that to evolve to that level, but that's one thing actually I've heard others say in rooms that you weren't in, is that you were incredible with systems and processes and delegation. And so when people talk about you in rooms that you're not in and they say things like that about you, that says a lot about business owner. So let's touch on that a little bit, if you will.
Yeah, well, Joey, I appreciate that, man. I thank you for your kind words. So, yes, systems and processes. I'm a big believer. There's this theory, if you will, leadership and systems and processes, where most people wanting to be extremely efficient. The reality is, efficiency is generally efficient. It takes efficiency and effectiveness to equal productivity. And I think that's when you maximize your process. I think too often folks focus way too much time on effectiveness and efficiency, but they never productivity, so they're not optimizing their process. And I think, look, I mean, I'm going to give you something very cliche here. One of my favorite books is by Dan Sullivan. It's called Who Not, Who Not. And I think it's about the who's in our life. And when you surround yourself with wonderful people, with phenomenal people, people that are better than you, then it's going to elevate you in your business. And that's something that I believe in. You can't have pride. You got to leave the egos at the door. Right. And
Yeah,
I think that's a real thing. And I've been very fortunate in my life to have hired, to have worked along. I'm a big believer in the team concept. Seldom will you ever hear me say so and so works for me. They work with me, because I
absolutely.
think you have to work with others to be successful. And I don't shy away from that. When you get too prideful, when you have too much ego and you can't find a way to leave that stuff at the door, I think that's when your systems and processes break down. And you have to elevate folks. You have to let them fail. You have to allow them to make decisions. I tell my people all the time, I would rather you make a wrong decision than no decision at all. And
I
because
like
if you
that.
make a decision and it's not necessarily the most efficient or productive decision, we can fix that. And we can grow and we can learn and build upon that in the future. If you make no decision at all, I can't help, particularly if you're a leader. So systems and processes are very important. Delegating is also very important. Not to get too philosophical and bore you with, I'm a huge reader. John
Yeah.
Maxwell talked about the leadership lid, and I'm a
Mhm.
big believer in that. So I'll give you an example. There are things we're inherently and extrinsically good at. One of my talents, I feel like, at least what I've been told, is communication, speaking,
Absolutely.
communication,
Yeah.
publicly or private, just communication. If I'm a 7 or an 8, Joey, in communication, and I work really hard at it, maybe I can one day be a 9 or
Right.
I've also been told that I'm not the most patient out of the blocks. If I'm a 3 or a 4 with patience, I spend all of my time trying to become more patient. I'm going to be more patient, but I'm never going to be a 10. I do have daughters now, so I've learned to be a lot more patient than I used to. But that
Yeah.
said, focus on your strength. Focus on the areas in which you are best, and then find the who is better than you at the rest.
I love
Right.
that.
And I'm a big believer in that, because I try to plug those gaps and fill those holes with people that are better than me where I'm weak. And I think that's what elevates us all together.
Yeah, I love that. That's a book that I've actually read. I've read and have reread, and I listen to often in the car. Do not how, because it's something I've definitely struggled with, is letting go of control. And because over the years I've turned over the reins to people and have been let down a couple times. And but more often than not, when I offer someone an opportunity, they do very well at it. I think it's more so a personal thing with me, is letting go of that control and allowing someone else to have the opportunity to to do what they do best, and actually, and in a lot of cases, they do it better than I do, and I have no problem with saying that at all, because it's like you say, if it's something that they're more naturally better at, then all means. I tell you what, paperwork, spreadsheets, being super organized, that's something I struggle with big time. But on the sales side of things, that's always been something, and that was my strong suit, was being in front of people face to face, more one-on-one conversationally, as something that I've always excelled at. And but I definitely please, so I wouldn't take the paperwork off my plate because that's an absolute weakness for me. So definitely, I highly recommend Who Not
Absolutely.
How. Yeah, Who Not How is just such an incredible book. Yeah. So
Yeah, I
let's talk.
agree.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the other. I mean, you've got obviously New Story Lending is the one of the main businesses you and Juan Rodas have together, which you guys have had a tremendous amount of success with. That you've been in that world for over 2 decades, and you also have ELM rental properties, Miller Custom Construction, where you do some home building and things like that as well. Talk about some of the various companies that you have, and probably the who not how is detrimental to be able to have your hands in that many different entities and still be able to maintain your sanity, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, Joey. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, man. I mean, it's all about the right news. And I'll tell you, in all of my companies, I'm very fortunate to have those people. And it didn't start out immediately. You know how it is as a business owner, you have to be in the grind. You have to work both and on your business simultaneously when you're building businesses. And especially at an early age when you may not have the resources that you do later on. So I've been very fortunate fairly quickly in my career to find the right people. And those people, for the most part, have been with me for a really, really long time. And I'm very blessed. That is a blessing, especially in industries. The housing economy, just in general, has a lot of attrition.
Mhm.
Our attrition rate is consistently outpaces and outperforms the industry's attrition rate. So we're very proud of that. Culture means a lot to us. But yeah, I mean, look, from the Miller companies, which is a conglomerate of construction and insurance and that side of the housing economy and the new story lending, the same can be said for all of them, Joey, at the end of the day. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I was very fortunate to have a partner in business on the news story side, like my brother Juan, because
Mhm.
it doesn't always happen where partnerships, you have that personal relationship that's more professional and business oriented. And Juan and I didn't meet from a business perspective initially. He and I both served as executives at a former company that we were both at. And, I'm thankful that God brought us together because now we've built this beautiful thing we call New Story Lending, and it's been a tremendous ride. And it's not to sound cliche. We joke with each other, hey, we're kind of married. It's like, I joke with my wife. I'm like, it's like he's my dude at work, but no, he, we, it goes back to who not. The
Mhm.
reality is there are certain things in business that I'm very good at. There are things that he's really good at. And when you combine those, we have been able to build New Story much more quickly than most mortgage companies can be built. I mean, I'll give you, for instance, within 90 days of inception, we're profitable, Joey, in
Wow.
an environment where independent mortgage banks are just now in Q3 2025 posting profit since the
Wow.
first time, and I'd have to go back and look, but it's been about 2 years. So we're
Yeah.
very proud of that. We also got our HEC approval within 90 days. We built our systems within 6 to 7 months. Our cost to produce is lower than the industry average. And the truth is, we're in 36 states right now in counting. And that is
Wow.
all in roughly 2 years in our evolution at New Story. And the truth is, here's the reality. Could I have built New Story on my own? Absolutely. Could Juan have built it on his own? Absolutely. We both have been doing this for over 20 years each. So we
Right.
know enough to do it. But I could not have built it. I don't think that he could have built it. And as I
Right.
mentioned to you earlier on the show, you have to leave pride in your egos. We have a dyadic leadership model where we truly do lead the organization together, and it's very blended. So
Mm.
while I generally run front end of the house and he runs the back end of the house, we are very blended. It's a very blurred line where we both kind of step into each other's sphere, if you will, when needed. So that's what it's about. When I was younger and perhaps dumber, I wasn't a big fan of partnerships just because
Right.
maybe it was ego, maybe it was something else. I can't pinpoint it, but I can tell you that as I've gotten older in this chapter of my life, I've greatly appreciated others' intelligence and their abilities to do things in which I'm not the greatest. And I think when you combine those talents together, that's when you succeed together. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I always give credit to the Lord above for his grace, but along with that, the right partnerships, the right in your life will always help you succeed more quickly, I think, than you will.
Yeah, most definitely. I had someone tell me one time, Joey, your story's been fun to watch. And watching you guys build New Story has been really fun to watch because to see two people that are just experts in their field work together and grow something at an extremely rapid pace. You guys have grown this over a 2-year period to be in 36 states. It's pretty freaking incredible. And so I've enjoyed watching you grow it. And we work together on so much with our real estate team. We send most of our business over to you guys just because we know that we can trust you guys are going to get it done. And I don't think I've had a better problem solver in the mortgage industry than you and your team, Shane. So big shout out to you on that. Big applause for that. And thank you for the partnership for sure. I've
Thank you.
definitely enjoyed it. Yeah, most definitely. But yeah, man, something with New Story. There's meaning behind that name. And you shared the meaning with me. And I think when you had your grand opening at the Seneca office, you shared a little bit about that. If you will share a little bit about the name New Story and why that's so important to you.
Oh man, I'd love to. But first of all, Joey, I just want to thank you as well for your kind words just a moment ago. We appreciate your partnership, and we feel the same way about you and your team. So thank you for that. But New Story, yeah, it's kind of interesting because without getting into too much background, we didn't really start out as New Story. In fact, we had a couple of different names that Juan and I were talking through. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. We were at a restaurant one night and it was pretty late. If I remember correctly, I want to say that we were in Dallas
Okay.
and he and I were at a restaurant having dinner, talking through all of the things. I mean, you can only imagine all the
Right.
things that we had to talk through. But we went around the room that night and pulled people on the name.
Yeah.
It was, and the irony about it was a name that was not New Story. So we we went around and we took this poll, like, which variation of this name do you like most? And then we ended up completely pivoting and coming up with New Story. So the meeting, again, that's one of those divine things because I don't
Right.
know that we could have had a better name for what we represent, what we stand for. It wholeheartedly supports our purpose in giving back to the communities we serve. But New Story is, in its simplest and most orthodox form, we believe that everyone has a story. And
Def-
regardless of that story, you can create a new story through the American dream of homeownership. Whether it's a primary residence or a first time home buyer purchasing a home for the very first time, a second home buyer, an investment property owner, whatever it may be, we have all of the products and the service to support whatever your journey is. And we believe in creating those new stories. And it's not just home ownership. Obviously, that's our business. We're an independent mortgage bank, but we also believe in paying back we serve because they do give so much to us. And we're big believers in the philanthropic part of giving. And that's one of the pillars that we stand on at New Story, as we understand without our communities and without our partners and our consumers and our staff that we wouldn't exist. So it's part of our story, but we want to be part of your new story as well when it comes to ownership. So that's
yeah.
really the crux of the name. And I would say the purest form of it, because
Yeah.
homeownership is most of the time someone's largest investment. And it is the American dream, homeownership.
That's incredible. Really incredible there. And going back to partnerships a bit, I've also struggled with some partnerships over the years, just finding that right fit of partnership. And it sounds like you and Juan, I can see the chemistry there. You guys just work extremely well together. And I've been fortunate to have a really good business partner on the development side of Freeman and Martin. And just when you get that right partnership, if it's the wrong partnership, it's a struggle every step of the way. Every step of the way is a struggle, but when you get the right one, it's just the opposite. Things just click. It just you think the same way, and the And you also have someone that can, if you're slacking a little bit, they'll call you to the carpet on it, and vice versa. And that's the way it should be. It should be able to do that in a partnership. That's been a fun part of business partnerships with me as well. One thing that I do want to ask you, and I ask most entrepreneurs that come on the show, which is something that I hear a lot around thrown around the real estate office: work-life balance. And work-life balance it's something that I don't necessarily believe in work-life balance myself. I believe in the work and family, or everything is important, right? But I think there's gonna be periods of time where, and I think the imbalance is in order to create more balance in the future for the family, I think is my philosophy on it. But how about you, work-life balance? How's that worked out for you over the years?
Well, Joey, I had a feeling you were going to ask me this question. I actually laughed in my mind earlier because I said, Joey's going to ask me this question and he's going to get me in trouble. But since I've done podcasts in the past, I'm asked this question. I always say, oh my goodness, man, you're going to get me in trouble.
Yeah.
So me telling you that should tell you how I feel about that, but I'll explain. First of all, I think that production in work is biblical, number one. And without getting off on that philosophy or that side of it, I think we're meant to work. I think we're meant to produce. I think we're meant to be providers, right? And I'm not suggesting that's just a male female thing. I think inherently we are meant to provide and produce it and produce your fruit, whatever that may be. I think that it's important to balance where you are providing both mentally, emotionally, economically to your family. And I think that it's up to you to determine what that balance is. Where I think that entrepreneurs often succeed is they recognize that balance is not necessarily a 40-hour work week. I'm
Right.
not a big, and this is where I'm going to get in trouble, I'm sure. And I've made this comment before. I'm not a big believer in the 40-hour work week. I'm a big believer in work to standard, not to time.
Right.
And particularly for those who want to be high income earners and wealth producers, because I don't think you can work 30, 35, 40 hours a week and expect to be among the top. Right.
Right.
And I think that in this country, I think we may have gotten, not necessarily for me, because I'm a worker and
Right.
I'm probably always going to be built that way. My wife will tell you that if I wasn't working, I'd be doing something because I can't be static. But I think the pandemic, to a large degree, with all of the remote work, no one wants to come into an office anymore. Okay. I'm not suggesting that you have to be in an office to produce, but I think opposite has occurred in many instances. I think because of the remote work and because of the pandemic and folks being able to work from anywhere, it's caused us to retract a little bit. And 40 used to be standard, and in many instances, 40 is not even standard anymore. It's less than that. And I would argue that as an entrepreneur, if you want to really grow your business and you want to elevate, you probably have to work more than 40 hours. I can't
Right.
remember the last time I've worked 40 hours, and I'm not trying to put myself in a pet. But I think that if you're going to succeed in business, you have to invest in your business. And I don't think you can do that if you are not working on your business. And that oftentimes, not every single day or every single week, I mean, don't misrepresent what I'm saying, but
Right.
I think that more times than not, I'm going to work more than 40 hours. And if you
Yeah.
want to grow, you have to work more than 40 hours. So I'm not a fan of people who work a traditional 8-hour day, take an hour for lunch, and they go home and after work or a third of their work is not completed. I'm a big believer in working as standard. But I'm also, the opposite is also true. If you have your grinders, they can come in and get it done. And I think what that provides flexibility. I have staff that'll tell you they come in, they crank it out, they bust their pumps, they do a tremendous job, and they might not work 8, 10 hours. They may work 6, but they get the job done and they perform the standard that is necessary to be. I'm not a clock cruncher, believe in just logging hours necessarily. I believe in working until the job is done, and that more times than not requires you to work more than a traditional 40 hours.
I
So
couldn't
there you
agree
go,
more.
Joey.
I
You're going to
agree
get
wholeheartedly.
comments. People are going to jump on my back. They're going to
Yeah.
get frustrated and they're going to get angry with me, and it's all your fault.
I couldn't agree more though, man. And I love what I do. It doesn't feel like I'm working. It's not like I get up in the morning and I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to go to the office. It's never that. I love what I do. You love what you do, and it shows in your work. It's the passion, the commitment. It just comes naturally. It's not like a forced thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm just not frolicking around all day, just rainbows and butterflies. I'm not going to give that illusion, but man, it's the good, the bad, the ugly of it. I love it all, and I don't want to run from it. I don't. It just doesn't even feel like work. It's just part of who I am, and I think you're built the same way. And yeah, I think we kind of share the same philosophy there on that. And it's I've certainly been disagreed with quite a bit. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy taking some time off too and enjoying a vacation here and there, but not to I'm honestly, if I have a good break on vacation, I'm anxious to get back to to my business, to the business, because I love it. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. And that's where I get some of my best thinking in and best ideas. But you said something a little earlier on the show, Joey, the word passion. And I think that's really what it's about. And I'm a big believer in passion and finding your passion in work, because to your point, passionate about it, it doesn't feel like work. And that's probably why I don't feel like I'm working a lot, even when I am. So find your passion, because if you're not passionate about what you're doing, man, life, life can be so much better than that if you love it and you're enjoying what you're doing.
Yeah. I've certainly had agents over the years that when they first get started, they're focused on, man, I've been here for X amount of hours and I spent this much on gas. And I'm like, welcome to real estate. You know what I mean? If you're going to be in real estate, don't count the hours and don't count how much gas money you're spending, because I mean, that's a not a good way to look at the real estate industry. If you're going to start and counting your gas and tire wear,
That's right.
um, that's just perspective, certainly perspective. One last thing I would say, is there any, as far as for the listeners, for entrepreneurs, and just people in general, any one thing that you've learned over your career, any piece of advice that you would like to share that maybe that you feel was most valuable that you've learned over the years?
Yeah, well, I've been very fortunate to, I talked a little earlier about my faith, and before I was married, and I still do, I still rely on that very heavily. But before I was married, there were truly is the adage of being about being lonely at the top. It can be very lonely at the top sometimes. So it's always nice to be able to have those conversations and speak and rely on something. And I relied a lot on my faith. And then, of course, I would say beyond that, whenever I got married, I would say the single most thing for me is you have to have a great partner. And my Leanne is a phenomenal partner to me. You talk about partnerships, and that's a tremendous ultimate partnership there, because she takes care of our household, she takes care of our kids, and I could not do what I do without. So whatever partner you have in life, make sure it's a supporting partnership that is going to support your endeavor to produce and provide. Because if you do not have that, it's going to be very challenging. Beyond that, Joey, I would say for any early entrepreneur that's not at that stage in their life, because not everyone starts out married with a partner or a spouse, I would say go back to that resolve.
Yeah.
The single most word that I can give you to rely on when you are creating business, when you are establishing industry, is resolve. Have to be disciplined. You're going to have some setbacks. The evolution of your business is not always going to go as you expect, but you have to be consistent. You have to be resolute in your endeavor, because if you ever give up, if you ever lack discipline, it's going to be extremely challenging. So stay the course, keep grinding, instill some resolve, and you can make it in your entrepreneurial career.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I heard a quote the other day that really fits well with what you're saying, which was, successful people don't always do what they want, but they always do what's required. And so I think resolve speaks perfectly to that, and having the right partner in life, and I couldn't agree more. And so it's incredible that you've found that person in your life that helps promotes you and uplifts you and understands the crazy mentality that we have as entrepreneurs. To have someone support that, and it can be very challenging and very difficult. And so that's awesome. I agree with you on that as well. So thank you so much for coming on here. I'm so appreciative that you finally got to come on here, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the friendship and business partnerships that we have together. And thank you so much, Shane. Sincerely appreciate you coming on here. Where can the listeners find you, Shane?
Oh goodness. So yeah, I mean, we all have all the social media outlets, newstorylending.com, www.newstorylending.com is our website. You can find out about New Story, read our story on there. It's pretty interesting if you want to take a peek at that. And excuse me, we're on LinkedIn as well, and then our Facebook page and Instagram. Those are our primary social media sources. New Story Lending for all of those that I just mentioned, and you can find us on there. The same is true of our personal pages on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Shane Miller, Juan Rodas for New Story. And if you want to learn more about us, please go follow us. Reach out to us anytime. We'd love to chat.
Awesome. Thanks again, Shane. That's it for this episode of Home Brew. If it resonated with you or gave you a fresh perspective, share it with someone else who's working hard to make their mark. Subscribe, stay curious, and remember, no matter the challenge, keep pushing forward, because success is brewed one step at a time. We'll see you next time. Same place, new story.